Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys about one of the really pervasive myths you hear out there perpetuated in the bodybuilding world to the point to where I see it in video comments, because I did a video yesterday talking about how it was pretty much impossible to get legitimately stronger on a weighted chin-up and have your biceps shrink. And I had someone come in and comment with one of these typical bodybuilding cliches saying, well, no, I train mine in a way to where my biceps don't really get stimulated. I know how to hang them correctly. And you always hear bodybuilders talking about using your hands like hooks so that you get less bicep stimulation so you can get more back work done. Now, here's the reality of that. That's actually not true. That's actually not true at all. You can't remove your biceps from any back exercise other than maybe like a pullover. That's about it. Even deadlifts will work your biceps a little bit. Now, here's the other thing. They also have this idea that it's somehow beneficial to your back to do so. Here's the reality. When we compare pull-ups versus chin-ups, what have we seen in lab studies? Pull-ups and chin-ups work the lats about the same amount. Chin-ups work the biceps more than an overhand grip pull-up. Both work the biceps, but because the chin-ups include more bicep, most people are stronger on chin-ups. They're easier. They're easier because you're involving the biceps. You're involving more muscles than just the lats with a more effective line of pull. Chin-ups will build your lats just as well as the pull-up will. And that's the point that people miss with it. They're like, well, it's harder because it removes the muscle, so it must be better for the back. It's not. There isn't more activation when you do that. By using a hand grip that activates the biceps less, it doesn't actually train the back more because it forces you to be slightly weaker. All that happens is you don't get as much bicep work. And again, we've seen plenty of studies at this point showing lat pull downs for novice lifters cause more bicep growth than curls do. Not a lot more, but it's a little more. And that's with an inefficient line of pull, really. So the whole idea that you can separate these two is really ludicrous. And I'm going to go to the next level with this in a minute, and I'm going to discuss forearms. But here's the thing. If you look at guys who have massive backs, I don't care whether it's bodybuilders, strongmen, powerlifters, whatever, you'll notice there's massive variations in how they train their back. And none of them seem to have necessarily better back development based upon that. Everyone who does tons of pulling, whether it's a combination of deadlifts and chin-ups, deadlifts and rows, anyone who does large volumes of pulling with heavy weight, whether they use strict form, whatever they do, tend to have a well-developed back. Go look at various guys who have massive back development. You're going to find individuals who use extremely opposite training styles who, relative to their overall size, have back development that's just as big as another. You'll see guys who use very, very strict form for various back exercises, and others who are really sloppy and cheat and flop and use body English and inertia so that they can use a heavier weight. You don't really see much difference in back development between the two. Overall, both develop big backs as long as they do large volumes of pulling with moderately or very heavy weight. They all have massive back development. In fact, you see plenty of powerlifters and Olympic lifters who don't even necessarily do rows and chin-ups who still have fantastic lat development. Why? Same thing, we've seen studies that show that deadlifts are massive recruiters of your lats. Power cleans effectively recruit your lats. Now, from a bodybuilding perspective, that doesn't make sense. People say, no, it can't. They don't work it through the full range of motion, all this stuff. Yeah, they don't, but they still light up on the EMG. Doesn't mean they're the best exercises. I'm not telling you that a full range of motion exercise won't do better, because it probably will. Partials with heavy loads are not the best way to build muscle mass, but they can still build substantial muscle mass. In other words, if you deadlift a lot, with a lot of volume, with a lot of weight, you will probably build big lats even if you don't train your lats directly. Now, they'd be bigger if you train them directly. They would be bigger. But let that sink in. They will still grow. Squatting and deadlifting will put meat on your lats. It's just not the most effective way to do it. Rows and chin-ups will do a better job of it, but not like twice the job, meaning, in other words, you're not going to double the size, the amount of gains you get by doing that. They'll put more on it, though. And that's the problem with this idea. All these guys want to try to take their biceps out. They say, oh, I want less bicep involvement so that they don't become a limiting factor, or they won't be a limiting factor. I've never seen anyone who does a lot of weighted chin-ups and heavy deadlifts. So again, we're not doing any exercises where they're trying to let their arms hang like hooks, or whatever they're describing. I've never seen someone who focuses on those two lifts as an example who doesn't have really tremendous back development. All right, trying to remove your biceps from a lat exercise is really futile because it's going to force you to do more bicep work. Now, a lot of people will say, well, I want to do more bicep work, so I do it that way. It's like, okay, but let's not pretend that you're doing it because it's going to give you better back development. You're doing it because you enjoy doing curls and you want to do lots of curls, and you're too fatigued from training your back to do so. That's your only reason. It has to do with preference. It has nothing to do with better development. And that's fine. If someone really loves curling and they want to try to train their back that way so that they can squeeze more curls in without getting inflammation of their connective tissue, then more power to them. But in other words, if you do it this way and you try to find ways to remove your biceps, in other words, only doing wide grip pull-ups instead of chin-ups and things like that, trying to adjust the way you do it, then understand you will have to do more bicep work if you want everything balanced. But it's not going to help your back grow any faster. It's just going to help you grow slower overall and require you to do more exercises. Now, that kind of comes to the other point of people always saying, well, I want to remove this extra muscle so that I can work the main muscle more. Well, that's well and good if the muscle you're trying to remove is overdeveloped and you don't want it to grow as fast anymore. Like if you don't want your biceps to grow as fast anymore, things like deadlifts are really good then for your lats. But to take a muscle that you still want to improve and try to remove it from a basic compound to try to stimulate a different muscle doesn't make sense. It only makes sense in the minds of bodybuilders. It doesn't make sense in the mind of someone who looks at biomechanics and who says, hey, I'm trying to get bigger. I'm trying to get bigger overall. It doesn't make sense. And the most extreme example, we'll go back to the grip training. You always see guys who will use straps and they'll develop a weak grip because they say, I don't want my straps to be a limiting factor in my lat development. So I use straps. I don't want my grip to be a limiting factor, so I'm going to strap up. Yet every person you see who has an iron crushing grip, who doesn't use straps, who does tons of pulling, whether it's deadlifts, rows, chin-ups, who doesn't use straps for anything, they still have massive lats. They still have massive lats if they're strong on all these exercises. So there's no reality to that either. In other words, I have never in my life seen anyone switch to straps because they felt their grip was a limiting factor and their back suddenly blow up. Plenty of guys, their back blows up just by doing lots of pulling and letting their grip strength go up with it. And I've done whole videos on that before. I've done videos explaining why straps are bad and why they actually remove some of the most effective tools you have, such as using your grip strength to judge where you're at in terms of overreaching. And they're actually, your grip strength, being able to assess your grip strength workout to workout, is an extremely effective self-monitoring tool for your recovery. So straps actually remove a very, very valuable tool that you can use to fine-tune your own training programming. So for that reason alone, they're stupid. For anyone who really understands their body and training programming, they really don't make sense because they remove your ability to assess your grip day to day. But they go back to the idea that somehow another muscle is going to limit the development of a bigger one, as if it wouldn't just be proportionate. In other words, people who do massive amounts of pulling, large volumes of rowing and chinning and everything else without straps don't have grip problems. The only people who end up with these grip limitations are the people who don't do enough volume on their pulling, and then they start using straps sometimes for their heaviest sets, and that's the people who end up developing the grip problems. In other words, once you start using the straps, or you just simply don't do much rowing or chinning, you don't do a lot of pulling anyways, those are the people who end up needing the straps. They created the problem that wouldn't have existed in the first place had they just run a balanced training program without the straps and trained correctly. They would have never developed the grip problem that they're worrying about limiting them to begin with. It's a self-inflicted problem, and then once you start it, it kind of spirals out of control. But it kind of goes back to the other point. There's no need to try to limit a smaller muscle in a big compound movement in the hopes that by trying to remove it from an exercise or not allowing it to be a limiting factor that it's going to make the bigger muscle grow. That's not how it actually works. You can develop them in proportion, and you'll actually get bigger overall if you just go ahead and work all of those muscles and not try to come up with silly ideas to get around it. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.